Hello, welcome to this lecture. Today we're going to discuss the topic metaplasia. It is defined as a reversible change of one type of epithelial or mesenchymal adult cell to another type of adult epithelial or mesenchymal cell, usually in response to abnormal stimuli, and often reverts back to normal on removal of stimulus. However, if the stimulus persists for a long time, epithelial metaplasia may progress to dysplasia and further into cancer. So in this definition, the main thing that we need to understand that it is the reversible change of the either epithelial cells or mesenchymal cells. So the next question is, what are mesenchymal cells? Mesenchymal cells are the cells that is responsible for differentiation of a number of cells. For example, osteoblast for bone cells, chondrocytes for cartilage cells, myocytes for muscle cells, and adipocytes for fat cells. So actually, these all cells such as osteoblasts, chondrocytes, myocytes, and adipocytes actually differentiate it through mesenchymal stem cells. We can say that mesenchymal stem cells will then later on get matured into these further classified cells. So if any stimulus that is not required at that time, or if any failed cellular response occur, then the cells will change from one type to another type. But when the stimulus will be removed, stimulus could be in the form of any, you can say that the mediators or chemical messengers that is responsible to send the message to develop such kind of tissues. And if the chemical messengers are inappropriate, then they usually convert into another form, which is the pathological form, and then that leads to metaplasia. And if the stimulus persists for more than uh, time, then it can lead to dysplasia, and then cancer will be developed. This picture is showing you the schematic diagram of normal endocervical epithelial, and then what happened that it changes into squamous metaplasia. And you can see that these cells are normal columnar type cells, but what happened, it changed to squamous cells. And you can see the size, the cell number increases, and then with the passage of time it progress further to dysplasia. We will discuss in next lecture what is dysplasia, and then it can become the carcinoma. How can we classify it? Metaplasia, we can classify metaplasia into subdivisions. Number one is epithelial metaplasia, and number two is mesenchymal metaplasia. The epithelial metaplasia has been subdivided into squamous metaplasia and columnar metaplasia, whereas mesenchymal metaplasia has been subdivided into osseous metaplasia and cartilaginous metaplasia. What is epithelial metaplasia? Epithelial metaplasia is responsible for conversion of one type of cells into squamous type depending upon the type of infection, and it could be subdivided into either squamous metaplasia or columnar metaplasia. And as the name indicates, it is epithelial metaplasia. It means it is a metaplasia of the epithelial cells. So the epithelial cells could be squamous and could be columnar. When we discuss about the squamous metaplasia, and the squamous metaplasia is actually the specialized uh, it is more common, and various type of specialized epithelium are capable of undergoing squamous metaplasia due to chronic irritations such as mechanical, chemical, or infection in origin. So the common example in squamous metaplasia is when we see in bronchus in chronic smokers. This is an example of squamous metaplasia that occur in especially in smokers, and in this case the pseudo stratified columnar ciliated epithelium will change into stratified squamous epithelium. So what is the difference between both type of cells? First of all, you need to understand the term pseudo. Pseudo, the term mean false, or we can say not true, whereas the word stratified means layers of arranged in a sequence in one after one. So what happened in squamous metaplasia? The cells, especially the pseudo-stratified columnar ciliated epithelium, we also use the word ciliated, means the presence of cilia, which is the hair-like structure. So what happened in squamous metaplasia? The cilia has been lost. The pseudo-stratified has been changed into stratified, means these, if you see or take a look of both on the left side and on the right side, they are only very only one or two layers can be seen in pseudo stratified, because they are not actually in the layers. That's why they term as pseudo stratified. But what happened after squamous metaplasia? You can see there is an increase of the cells that are arranged in layers. So that is why we term as stratified. And because of the conversion of pseudo-stratified columnar cells to stratified squamous cells, we term as these condition. Second thing that we must need to understand, that when we talk about pseudo-stratified columnar ciliated epithelial cells, they are in, their shape look like in a column, like these column like structures. So they are pseudo stratified because they are in layers but not so many layers, so we term as pseudo stratified. Then they are column shaped structures, so we term as pseudo stratified columnar. Then we have the, on that upper layer we have the cilia, so we mentioned ciliated, and then it is an epithelium. And when what happened in squamous metaplasia, the pseudo stratified changed to stratified, meaning more layers. Then they are now changed from columnar to squamous cells. What is the difference between columnar and squamous? Columnar are more in column-like structure, whereas squamous are not column. They are not columnar in shape structure. So you can see these are round structures. They are not arranged in the column. They are not in a column. But then because they are arranged in the layers, so we mentioned stratified. Then we don't have cilia now, so that is another thing that can differentiate from pseudo stratified columnar ciliated epithelium to stratified squamous epithelium. And this is an example, especially the histological pathohistology, especially histopathology can be seen on in people that smoke a lot uh, in bronchus. The second example in squamous metaplasia is the metaplasia occur in uterine cervix, especially at endocervix. This is a picture of the cervix, and we can see that this is the endocervix and this is the ectocervix, and that junction is known as squamocolumnar junction. And if the metaplasia occur in the endocervix, that is a common example in this case, and usually it occur with the progression of the age, means if the woman grow older, then this metaplasia may occur because of the hormonal changes or because of the menopause. We will discuss them later on in reproductive system. If we take a look of the textbook, I already discussed two examples. In this case, we have some more examples like in gallbladder, and it is also present in prostate, especially in chronic prostatitis or in estrogen therapy. These squamous metaplasia also found in renal pelvis or in urinary bladder. Then vitamin A deficiency, apart from xenophthalmia, we found that squamous metaplasia in nose and bronchi, in UTI or in salivary glands. And why? Because of the deficiency of vitamin A. So these are all examples of squamous metaplasia, but the common example that I discuss is, if you take a look on the textbook, is uh, that one, the chronic smokers, that smokers that is responsible for uh, these changes from pseudostratified to squamous metaplasia. So you don't need to memorize all of the examples, just need to focus on uh, this example number one, and the second example is uterine endocervix. We will discuss more in detail in the systems later on. When we talk about columnar metaplasia, the columnar metaplasia is the transformation of the cells to columnar epithelium cells. And I already discussed the column epithelium cells are just like they are in column shape structure. They are in like a column. And this usually found in the intestinal metaplasia, especially in healed chronic gastric ulcer. And why this columnar metaplasia occur in healed chronic gastric ulcer? Because obviously we know in the gastric ulcer, the layer has been disturbed or destroyed because of the acid, and during the regeneration process, the intestinal metaplasia occur where the cell will develop again, will grow again to column like structure. So that's why that is appeared in intestinal metaplasia. The more common example in columnar metaplasia is Barrett esophagus, and this is a picture of the normal esophageal lining. And the main thing is that the cells change from squamous cells to columnar cells, and usually in this case that you can see that this is a lower end sphincter that is responsible to protect the esophageal lining. But what happened in Barrett esophagus, that sphincter get open because of the change of the cell type, and then it go back, and the cell content from and the stomach content go back to the esophagus and can lead to GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease. So this will happen in the Barrett esophagus. And why Barrett esophagus occur? Because, and this is the histological pictures, you can see that the squamous epithelium cells, because of the esophageal injury or because of the gland formation, it changed from squamous cells to columnar cells. You can see the difference. Squamous cells are, you can say that, the flat cells, whereas the columnar cells are in the column. So you can see these pictures, they are flat cells. The squamous cells are the flat cells and arranged in layer by layer, 1, 2, 3. They arranged in a layer, whereas they change from squamous epithelium to column like structure. They are more column shaped structures. So that's a key difference in Barrett esophagus. And if this proceed further, it can lead to dysplastic esophagus. They can arrange in further layers, one by one, stacked together. And if these persist occur, then it leads to esophageal adenocarcinoma. And as I already discussed in our previous point, that if metaplasia persists, it can lead to dysplasia, like in this case, dysplastic Barrett esophagus. And if this proceeds further, it can lead to carcinoma, like esophageal carcinoma. Now, next we have the mesenchymal metaplasia, which is the transformation of one adult type of mesenchymal tissues to another. And in this example, the main example is osseous metaplasia. And actually, the word osseous come from that term. I already written for you the collagen of bone. So the osseous metaplasia occur because of the formation of the bone in the fibrous tissue. That's the key characteristic in osseous metaplasia. And when we take a look of the example in osseous metaplasia, the common example in this case is myocystic ossificant, and this is a picture of CT scan where we can see that this structure which is present around the bone is showing you the structure which is resemble with the egg shaped structure. And in myocystic ossificant there is a formation of bone, and this bony structure will be appear because of maybe because of the trauma or accident or mechanical injury that leads to the formation of the bone. uh, and this is an example of myocystic ossificant. The other example in this category is leiomyoma. It is also known as uterine fibroid, and we will discuss this in detail in reproductive system.
A fibroid is a benign tumour that mainly consists of muscular tissue and usually grows inside the uterus. Fibroids are also called myomas. Its size ranges widely from a small tumour the size of a pea to a large tumour almost the size of the uterus. Myomas are classified into 3 types depending on the location where they're found. The intramural myoma, a fibroid that grows in the muscular wall of the uterus. The subserosal myoma, a fibroid located just beneath the outside mucosal covering of the uterus. Here, the fibroid projects to the outside and occasionally remains connected with the uterus only through a small stalk. The submucosal myoma, a tumour that grows beneath the surface of the uterus lining. Therefore, this type of fibroid can grow in the uterine cavity. The actual causes of development of a fibroid are still unclear. However, it has been documented that fibroids are associated with high levels of estrogen, the female sex hormone. Fibroids can only develop during reproductive years of women. Following menopause, the production of estrogen decreases, which will usually cause fibroids to shrink or disappear. Myomas are more common in non-pregnant and infertile women. In general, fibroids are asymptomatic or associated with just a few complaints. If any complaints occur, then the location, size and type of the fibroid are the major factors. Fibroids can affect nearby structures. They can cause compression of the bladder, which may lead to urinary complaints, or may obstruct the intestine, which may result in constipation. Other complaints can be backaches, abdominal problems, menstrual flow disturbances. Fibroids can impede normal childbirth, which may require caesarean delivery. Fibroids relatively more often lead to miscarriages. Whenever fibroids cause symptoms, they need to be removed or shrinked. Medications sometimes cause fibroids to shrink by blocking the production and secretion of estrogen. In other cases, surgery may be required to remove the fibroid. The type of surgery depends on the location of the fibroid. Sometimes it's possible to remove the fibroid with the help of a tube entered through the vagina, and the procedure is called hysteroscopic myomectomy. In other cases, surgery through the abdominal wall may be necessary. In the case of a large fibroid, hysterectomy may be the only solution. This option only applies when there is no desire to have more children. Your general practitioner can give you more information about the disorder and its possible treatments.
The other example in osseous metaplasia is in the arterial wall. It occurs because with the time as people grow old, and there is a formation of some bone like structure. I already discussed the soft tissues, myocystic ossificans. Then it could be occur in the cartilage of the larynx and bronchi in elderly patients. Then it could be formed in chronic inflammation due to prolonged duration. Then in leiomyoma, which will be formed in uterine, and because of the tumor. And then we have another example in this category is cartilaginous metaplasia, and it usually occur during the healing process, especially when a person is under fracture or because of any injury. So in the regeneration process, this cartilaginous metaplasia occur, and usually it occur, they mention here, because of the undue mobility, because the patient is static, they are not moving their body, and especially in patients that are under bed rest. How can we differentiate osseous metaplasia and cartilaginous metaplasia? The main difference between both of them is osseous metaplasia occur is the formation of the bone, whereas in cartilaginous metaplasia it is a formation of cartilage. And I am going to show you in one article on cartilaginous metaplasia. Usually it is not a common metaplasia, it is rare. And in one article that I found that it also occur in uterine leiomyoma. If you take a look of this, and you found that the main thing, I'm not going to discuss a detail, but this the structures look like this soft cartilage will be appear, and we can express in that term. So the difference between osseous metaplasia and cartilaginous metaplasia is the type of the structure that will appear, and then they are not you cannot differentiate with them as a tumor, because it occur because of the stimulus or any trauma or any injury, or if in this case patient is under bed condition, under bed rest for long term, and during the healing process they grow, and then when the stimulus has been eliminated, these tumors these structures has been lost. So thank you so much for today's lecture. Hope to see you again.